Hi, my name is Taylor, and I live in Saxby. I want to say I love the podcast, and I love a cup of cocoa.
If you'd like to leave a review or ask a question that's featured on the podcast, just go to breakglasspodcast.com.
In case of emergency, break glass. Real conversations, real stories about women who have walked the glass cliff and shattered the glass ceiling. With your host, Cheryl Coco.
Hi, and welcome to the Break Glass Podcast. I'm your host, Cheryl Coco. They call me Cup of Cocoa. And today we're going to talk about Mary Barra. On September 8th, 2022, Mary Barra tweeted, "On behalf of GM, I extend our heartfelt condolences to the British royal family and the people of the United Kingdom upon the loss of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Her leadership, grace, and devotion to service touched the lives of millions. She will be greatly missed." General Motors and the institution of the British Monarchy share some similarities. Stick with me here. Both can boast of longevity. There have been 61 monarchs of England and Britain spread over a period of 1,200 years. General Motors was founded in 1908, and all through, it was headed by quote unquote kings. It was only 100 years later that the General Motors empire was headed by a queen, Mary Barra. Dr. Darmani wrote a piece on December 12th, 2019, titled "The Balancing Act of Female CEOs From Glass Ceiling to Glass Cliff." She begins by asking, what do Barack Obama, former U.S. President, Mary Barra, CEO, General Motors, and Marissa Mayer, CEO of Yahoo, have in common? Speaking of Marissa Mayer, if you haven't yet, have a listen to her episode, which touches on both the glass ceiling and the glass cliff. Anyway, Dr. Darmani explains that all three are prominent examples of our tendency to push minorities into leadership positions in times of crisis, and that a company might announce a historic first appointment at the same time that they're really setting up that person to fail. She puts the words historic first in quotes. Jacqueline Tropp wrote an article in the New Yorker on April 29th, 2014, titled, "Is Mary Barra Standing on a Glass Cliff?" You get to decide from listening here. But she writes, not long after General Motors appointed Mary T. Barra as its CEO in January, it began recalling millions of cars in response to allegations that it didn't properly correct ignition problems linked to 13 deaths. More on this later in the episode, including how Mary Barra responded. But can we just take a second and think about how that must have felt? Like right after you're appointed CEO, they begin recalling millions of cars in response to allegations that it didn't properly correct ignition problems and that they were linked to 13 deaths. Okay, let's continue. Condolences, You're Hired is the provocative title of Bryce Covert's March 25th, 2014 article. He notes that for GM's Mary Barra and other female executives, a big promotion can feel like a kiss of death. He goes on to paint the dire landscape of GM that year. General Motors is a mess, he says. Still coming back from its bankruptcy, the automaker has been rocked by the recall of 1.6 million cars. Worse, the company knew about the defects as early as 2001. Let's see what Mary Barra does with it. So, what does she have to say about the glass cliff phenomenon? Carolyn McMillan's portfolio article of December 12th, 2014 is titled GM's Barra, says talk of glass cliff doesn't respect the work that women have done. She writes that when Mary Barra was asked to share her thoughts about the glass cliff debate regarding her promotion to GM CEO, Mary answered, "It somewhat amuses me because I don't know if any company is that good, that they could select somebody knowing that they would have a crisis." Others disagreed, though. Mary Barra has been the chair and CEO of General Motors since January 15th, 2014. She is the first female CEO of a big three automaker. She was born in 1961, meaning she was in her 50s when she became the CEO of GM. She's passionate about her job at GM, which could explain why she has worked there in different capacities for almost 4 decades. She says in a Stanford graduate business school talk, if you don't love your job, you need to act on that. How many of us are thinking right now, should I be acting? Well, let's listen and hear more of what she says. She goes on to explain that there's a certain je ne sais quoi element in the auto industry. There's just an excitement about building cars or trucks or crossovers. People name them, they write songs about them. For a lot of people, cars are an extension of them. I love the industry. Do you know somebody whose car is an extension of themselves? I sure do. I think she nails it there. In case you're curious about the songs that General Motors inspired, check out the article on npr.org. That's npr.org, titled Remembering GM at its Zenith. Or Chevrolet celebrates 100 years in song, where there's a list of top 100 Chevy songs, including the famous American Pie. You know that one. Bye, bye, Miss American Pie. I don't sing, but it's drove my Chevy to the levee. I hope you guys are singing with me. But it's a great song that hopefully everybody that's listening recognizes, even with that horrible voice that came across. In a May 2022 speech at Duke University, Mary shared that her father worked for General Motors for 39 years. That's cool. As a die maker, and that both her mother and father believed in the American dream. That if you worked hard enough, got yourself an education, and believed in yourself, well, you could achieve anything. Mary graduated from the General Motors Institute. It's actually now called Kettering University, but she graduated from the General Motors Institute in 1985 with a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering.
Hi, my name is Jessie. I'm calling in from DC, and I wanted to just say that I loved the podcast. I mean, I really love the podcast about Carol Bart. It really inspired me, and you guys keep kicking ass and break glass. Bye.
She attended Stanford Graduate School of Business on a General Motors fellowship and received her master's in business administration degree in 1990. So she began working for General Motors in 1980 as like a co-op student at the age of 18. It was basically a job that helped her pay for her college tuition. So in her Duke University speech, she explains like what a co-op student is. And basically she says, I worked for 3 months, then went to school for 3 months and did that for 5 years. And that's what paid for college. And it's where she met her husband, Tony, of 36 years. Now, let's talk about those issues of recalls. So, during her first year as CEO, General Motors issued 84 safety recalls involving 30 million cars. Remember that? She was called before the Senate to testify about the recalls and deaths attributed to the faulty ignition switch. The recalls led to the creation of new policies, actually, which encouraged workers to report problems they encounter in an attempt to change company culture. In a Stanford graduate business school talk, Mary gives her side of the story regarding the recalls. So she says, we were guided by three principles. One, doing the right thing for the customer, right? 2, being transparent. And 3, doing a lot of things in our power to make sure it never happens again. She adds that there were times when I had to say, I don't know. Those principles, if you remember from Meg Whitman, they're very similar. So if you haven't listened to the Meg Whitman podcast, make sure that you go back and learn from Meg Whitman. She says in the introduction of Meg Whitman's book, that's titled The First Question, it begins with the sentence, "What's the right thing to do here?" So it's really quite similar. We actually find quite a few similarities between these powerful women in powerful positions if you come to find those similarities between even the 3 that we've just discussed now. But Mary Barra's question is related to purpose. She says in the Duke University speech, "Purpose is the answer to why. Always ask yourself why." It's a simple question, and being honest with yourself will help you navigate all sorts of decisions, both big and small. It gives clarity and fuels you in challenging times. Also, in the Meg Whitman episode, we learned about one of Meg Whitman's difficult moments at eBay. Remember this? She and her eBay team had just experienced a 22-hour system outage that had nearly propelled them to a prime spot on the list of the most spectacular business failures of all time. So, yeah. In the Duke University speech, Mary Barra tells the graduating students, "You will make mistakes. You will mess up. Will you run, look the other way, hope everyone blames someone else, or will you own it?" I'm going to repeat that for everyone again. So Mary Barra tells the graduating students in her Duke University speech, "You will make mistakes. You will mess up. Will you run, look the other way, hope everyone blames someone else, or will you own it?" Owning your mistakes and working to fix them is one of the best ways to learn, she says. And she says she would also say to sleep at night. In the Stanford Graduate Business School talk, Mary revealed that she has a very collaborative leadership style. "I want people to challenge me," she says. "But if someone presents a compelling counterpoint, I want to hear that first. I try to make sure that there is a lot of constructive tension and that all views are heard." Mary learned the hard way the importance of listening to others. She reveals in that same speech, you're not going to get things right 100% of the time. No one does. Don't be so proud that you think that you have all the answers. Listen, and listen some more. The Marissa Mayer episode taught us a similar principle, that it's okay to ask for help from trusted friends, especially when faced with daunting decisions. I hope we all remember Andre's advice to Marissa Mayer. Alfred P. Salone was General Motors' longtime president, chairman, and chief executive. He once said, "Never be first at anything." Well, he would have been horrified to learn that in 2017, GM began to sell the Chevy Bolt EV, the first electric car priced under 40 grand, with a range of 200 miles. That year, Barra was the highest paid Detroit 3 executive. Her total remuneration, $21.96 million. Also in that year, in August, she was elected to the board of Disney. In 2021, Dale Buss's article on Forbes was titled, "Barra already ranks as GM's most important CEO since Alfred Sloan." As CEO, Mary made General Motors move into driverless and electric-powered cars through acquisition, including one startup in driverless technology. Her 2 previous tweets before the tweet about the Queen, remember that in the beginning? Before the Queen's demise, are about the Equinox electric vehicle. She tweeted, "The all-new Equinox EV is truly an EV for everyone. Versatile, great range, and expressive design in an affordable package. And it looks even better in person. So proud to offer even more customers the opportunity to have an amazing GM EV." And the best of both worlds, some of Chevrolet's most popular nameplates electrified. Hashtag Blazer EV, hashtag Equinox EV, hashtag Silverado EV, a stunning trifecta in New York City. She retweeted a tweet by CBS Morning's GM CEO, Mary Barra, she's adding herself, is unveiling the brand new electric Chevy Equinox. She says the company is focused on the quote-unquote end game of making all new light-duty vehicles in the U.S. electric by 2035. We think this vehicle is really going to change people's minds about electric vehicles. Mary is a member of the Stanford University Board of Trustees, the Stanford Graduate School of Business Advisory Council, and the Duke University Board of Trustees. She is married to consultant Tony Barra, and they have 2 sons who graduated from Duke University. And 2 dogs, too. I wanted to add that. She said in 2017 Stanford Graduate Business School Talk that she is pretty family-oriented. She's like a pretty family-oriented person. In June 2020, Mary Barra said she wanted General Motors to be the most inclusive employer in the world. Her 2022 Duke University article reveals that she was not just following a trend. Inclusivity is part of her DNA. One of the lessons she learned from her parents' kitchen table was include one more, make room at the table. She shares the story of how her mother always made room for family and friends and shared whatever they had, even if it was only tuna sandwiches. She notes, there was always room for one more. Everyone was included. That's what Tony and I have tried to do for our children. And that's what I try to do professionally as well. So what are some of the lessons that we've learned from Mary Barra and her story? Well, the lessons we can learn are summarized in her Duke University speech. First, do your best. Second, find your purpose. And third, listen to understand. Fourth, be honest, always. And fifth, include one more. The lessons we can learn from Mary Barra are summarized in her Duke University speech. First, do your best. Second, find your purpose. Third, listen to understand. Fourth, be honest always. And fifth, include one more. We're going to talk about another inspiring story of a female leader in the next episode. I hope that you enjoyed this one about Mary Barra. Don't miss Irene Rosenfeld's incredible journey on the next episode of this Break Glass podcast. I hope that you enjoyed listening. I'm your host, Cheryl Coco. They call me Cup of Cocoa, and I'll see you next time for Irene Rosenfeld.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. We really appreciate that effort. Now, you know what to do. In case of emergency, break glass with your host, Cheryl Coco.